We have a couple of little problems with our car, and then I see another car, and it's a perfect build. If I would have had that.
It took us a while to kind of iron out the production process. During that production ramp, it's super hard to be in vertical climb mode and get everything right on the little details. It's just a super difficult thing. We actually did improve gap and paint quality quite a bit towards the end of last year, even in the course of December. The paint wasn't necessarily drying enough. If you go faster, it's like you just discover these things. So if we knew them in advance, we'd fix them in advance. Production is hell. Tesla was the first to achieve volume production in 100 years, basically. I think Chrysler was the last one. Prototypes are easy and fun, and then reaching volume production with a reliable product at an affordable price is excruciatingly difficult.
We've seen everybody's. We've torn everybody's electric car apart. If I was going to tell somebody to buy one, I would suggest the Model Y. Model 3 we've got. This may be the second one that I'm going to suggest. 6,000 plus miles so far in a couple of days, in a few days. Seats in your car are phenomenal.
Minimize any peaks and any pressure peaks, so it evens out the pressure. If your butt hurts, it's basically going to be because there's some part of the seat that is producing a pressure peak.
A lot of the OEMs, they don't want to make seats because they say that's something that should be outsourced. And I believe that anything you touch, anything that you're going to interface with, has to be made in-house, because that's your profound knowledge.
It has improved quite a lot from the early production Model 3. One of the breakthroughs was actually Franz von Holzhausen had a seat that the studio had done, and I sat in that seat and I'm like, wow, this seat's great. And we're like, okay, let's figure out how do we get a production seat to feel like a bespoke, handmade, hand-tailored seat without costing a ton of money. So you just can't, it's very difficult to do that if you're working with a supplier.
I have to tell you about the best stuff. The beta autopilot system. They have problems. Mm-hmm. But the problems weren't with your system. They were with the roads. Either they don't paint in certain areas, or they paint right in the center. So how are we going to get legislation to make it so that things are consistent between states?
For self-driving, even if the road is painted completely wrong, UFO lands in the middle of the road, the car still cannot crash and still needs to do the right thing. The prime directive for the autopilot system is don't crash. Minimize probability of injury to yourself or to anyone on the road, on the pedestrians or anything like that. So, and it's really, it can't be dependent on the road markings being correct or anything like that. It's just got to be, no matter what, it's not going to crash.
I've sat in F-18s, a C-17. I know what you can do and what you can't do, what autopilot will do, and I never seen anything, never, ever seen anything quite like what you've got in the new self-driving thing. This is just absolutely brilliant. This should get into the marketplace as fast as possible. This will save more lives than airbags, seat belts, and anything else that anybody's ever gotten.
Because I think that's correct. It will. Yeah. We've got a very talented team that we built from scratch at Tesla for autopilot software and autopilot hardware.
How many lines of code is in that thing?
Well, I don't think lines of code is necessarily a metric of goodness. A large number of lines of code to be bad, not good. And in fact, I would generally give 2 points for deleting a line of code, 1 point for adding a line of code. We haven't actually counted it, but it's maybe, I don't know, a few 100,000 lines of code or something like that.
Really? When I counted up the number of things in the wheel area, I said this should all be one part, and then
totally agree.
Yeah, and you got it.
You can generally see the errors, the organizational structure errors. They manifest themselves in the product. There were a lot of right answers to the wrong question. Engineers would ask, "What's the best material for this purpose? Best material for that?" And they got 50 different answers, and they were all true individually, but they were not true collectively. It's way better to have a single piece casting. And then you don't have any gaps, no sealant. You don't have dissimilar metals. You reduce the size of the body shop dramatically.
Right.
Just having the rear body castings for Model Y reduced the body shop by 30%. We want fewer things, not more.
Yeah.
We got rid of 300 robots just with that rear body casting. When we go to the front body casting, we're getting rid of another 300 robots.
Thousands of engineers, and big time executives, and walk by it. Hey, have you ever thought of doing, Sandy? And they don't do it. And they don't do it because we've got this body shop. And because they've continuously hung their hat on this thing, they figured, this is the way it should go.
Well, they switched to a single piece casting. I think we need to get the Texas factory and the Berlin factory going. We just need basically an opportunity to kind of redo the factory without blowing up the cash flow of the company.
Right. Are you going to have 3 castings then, or just 2?
There'll be a rear casting, a front casting, and then the center will be a structural pack.
Yeah.
So the cells become structure. By essentially bonding the cells in there, and where the bonding foam serves as both an adhesive and a fire retardant.
Yeah.
You basically get 2 birds with 1 stone.
You got 3 for 1.
Yeah.
Because now you've got body stiffness that's gone up and all the other stuff that's gone along with it.
One of the examples we use at Tesla is like Lego. So like Lego is super precise because the press fit, I think they're precise down to about a 1/4 millimeter or less. If Lego can be that precise, then so can a car.
I applaud BMW for putting out the i3, but that carbon fiber body was absolutely perfect. Mm-hmm. And when if you had the stiffness of the castings down below, and you take a carbon fiber basically structure and put it over the top, absolutely every door is always going to be perfect. You won't have to have fixtures, you won't have to have anything. It just goes boom, done. That's ultimately what I think a perfect build is probably going to go for. But most people don't want to do it because they're talking about, oh, carbon fiber is so expensive. No, it's not. It's not really.
Carbon fiber with the resin has a coefficient of thermal expansion, which is basically 0. And if you have parts that are, say, aluminum or steel, aluminum's got quite a high, CTE. So then, if you have like a hot versus a cold environment, like you can't have your doors jam.
We found out the tricks that BMW used. So they've got cross car beams, which is going to shrink the most, and they're embedded right into the carbon fiber. So how is that possible? This will rip free. We tried this when I worked on the Boeing 787 and stuff, and we tried that. And when you do the thermal expansion and contraction, it just rips free from everything. But clever design or clever engineering on BMW's part made it so that you could do that.
We had to develop a custom alloy to make sure we could get good material properties, but not require any step after the casting that could distort the shape. The Model S and X castings, they required a heat treat step afterwards, and so it was always a pain in the neck because we couldn't really expand the casting because it would want a pretzel on us, like just potato chip or pretzel. Can't scale that. So we had to develop an alloy that was okay and also had good elongation properties in the event of a crash. There's like kind of a hard materials problem.
That kind of stuff is lost on most engineers because they don't take materials. So I wanted to be a metallurgist.
Yeah, material science is, I think, one of the most useful classes you can take in engineering, for sure.
Absolutely. I think that's something that I saw disappear when I was at Ford Motor Company. They don't invent materials there anymore. And actually, no one else did either, or does, are the things that maybe the bigger OEMs should be thinking about. I mean, I don't need the size of an engine plant and a transmission plant when I got a little dinky electric motor and a 1-speed gearbox. I mean, General Motors said that 2035 they're going to be nothing but electric cars.
That's cool.
A lot of executives come in after I gave a speech and said, this was a couple of years ago now, and I said that the crossover point for electric over ICE is 2030. And 50% of the vehicles are going to be sold are going to be, or more than 50% are going to be pure EV, or they're going to be hybrid.
10 years, it's probably majority EV.
Yeah, I truly believe that. But when I brought it out, analysts were saying, maybe somewhere around 2045 there'll be about 15% EVs and whatnot.
Sure.
And now we're looking at California with 8% right now and going higher.
Sure.
And then you've got Europe saying, forget it, you can't drive here if you've got a nice vehicle, on and on and on. I didn't care one way or another. Car's a car. With yours, initially, I don't like this, I don't like that. Then I drove it, and I took it into a parking lot, and I zipped around and whatnot, and I feel young again. I didn't expect that excitement. And then we started looking at the electronics and how much better, even the wiring is I think
there's a lot more that can be done to improve wiring.
Right now,
also like 12 volts. I mean, what are we still doing with 12 volts?
42 is where everybody should be, but
I think 48.
More 48. Yeah. That'll reduce the wire diameters and stuff like that, and that's just nothing but cash in the bank.
With the new SX, we're finally transitioning to a lithium-ion 12 volt, way more capacity, and the calendar and cycle life match that of the main pack.
When we tore apart the Y, I was expecting to see that because you'd said that you're getting rid of weight and the length of wires and whatnot.
You want to put power and data over the same wires.
That's right.
And have it be high speed, like higher speed than CAN bus.
Right.
And so you can like basically dump data on the bus instead of having all these point-to-point wires.
Same thing. It's hard to change the tires when you're going 80 miles an hour.
Generally, the path to leadership should not be through MBA business school situation. It's like kind of work your way up, do useful things. Somebody goes to a high-profile MBA school and then kind of parachutes in as the leader, but they don't actually know how things work. I mean, I don't want to trash MBAs too much here, and I actually do have a dual undergrad, Wharton undergrad, and physics at UPenn. So, and I was a teaching assistant for 2 semesters, and I graded MBAs and undergrads. People look at MBA school as like, I want to parachute into being the boss instead of earning it.
I've never really been a fan of short sellers. I don't know whether you have a comment on that.
There's very few areas in life where you can sell things that you don't own. It came from an era when stocks were traded by people traveling on horseback to exchange stock certificates. And in order to have the transaction speed not take weeks, somebody would say, well, the stock certificate is coming on that horse. I don't have the stock certificate right now, but I promise you that I'm getting the stock certificate. The rider's going to be here from Chicago in 3 days, and then I'll be able to give you the stock certificate. Yeah. That's where this whole silly thing arose. Yeah. The way short selling is used today is it's kind of like it's frankly used against the public. Most people aren't aware that short selling even exists. Like 0.01% of stockholders know how to use short positions to get ahead. Effectively a tax on the public.
I think it's immoral myself. I just don't think it's right at all.
Yeah.
A big group can come in and crush a company simply because, well, we're going to make a lot of money. I haven't made my my quota this month or what have you.
Yeah, I mean, Tesla was under massive attack by the short and distort, where they take a short position and then they do everything possible to trash the company in 6 ways to Sunday. And they were successful. It happened in 2013. And it happened in basically 2017 through 2019. I mean, the intensity of the attack was crazy, and I was like, man, it would like cause you to lose faith in humanity. The degree to which this went on. We don't have shorting in private companies. The vast majority of companies, over 90%, are private, and you cannot short them. And yet somehow we get private companies get things done. But it is vice disguised as virtue.
The self-driving. I'm telling you, it's just
sure.
It blows your mind. Are you gonna let anybody else have that?
I mean, we were gonna roll out the full self-driving to the whole fleet and make it available to the whole fleet. We're just being very careful about the testing. I think there's actually sort of a dangerous middle ground that we have to be careful of, where the system is good like 99.9% of the time, and then that could lead people to be complacent, and then it can be so good that you get comfortable, but not necessarily good enough to handle all of the corner cases. We want to just make sure that in that transition to full self-driving, it's really, we're taking as much care as possible.
Yeah.
A car that does not have self-driving in the future will be about as popular as a horse. They're still horses. People have horses, and a horse is not what you use for day-to-day transport.
In the olden days, they'd get drunk, fall asleep in the buckboard, and the horse would take them home. Self-driving, as far as I'm concerned. We're just getting back to work.
Well, I think actually that's one of the things we're going to program into the car. That if you fall asleep in the car, it'll just take you home.
Yeah.
Like, it is most likely that's where you want to go. If it detects that you're having issues, it'll take you to the hospital. Like if you say, just like
having a heart attack or something like that.
It'll just take you straight to the emergency room.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.